So what's changed? The landscape. Picture from about 1960, what West Point looks like. If you haven't been back, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as you've seen things change. Next, we no longer play polo, if you didn't know that. A couple of you didn't know that. We've also changed our night maneuvers. This was never officially sanctioned, it still is, and it still goes on, by the way, but we look at things a little bit differently. I would also tell you that, thank God, fashion has changed. But despite all of this, some things remain the same. The first day as a new cadet, our day, is absolutely the most miserable day a cadet ever has. And I intend to keep it that way. Classes are still absolutely demanding, and every cadet is an athlete. And military training is top-notch, and we continue to evolve. And I would tell all of you old grads, it's still hard. I would have validated these two cadets on the spot. Now, it's wonderful sometimes to see them get after each other. It's even more enjoyable to watch them get after Air Force. This was November, and we had a boxing match down in Hall, maxed out with attendance, and we beat Air Force 9 out of 10 matches. There was a lot of blood on the Air Force side, and I felt so good. General Shaw knows I apologize for that, but it's just instinctual, I think, at times here. Let me give you an idea what the current plebe class kind of looks like, at least their credentials when they walked into the place. You can see the numbers there. You can see SAT scores. Gordy Jack, no, that's not cumulative for your table to get in, but it's individually. So you can see how impressive these youngsters are. What's different? Let me touch it here. I was going to say it later in the program. What's really different is the physical aspect, and let me just hold that thought later on. But academically, we can compete with any Tier 1 university in the country, and we continue to do that over time. And I would tell you that our attrition rate per beast continues to decline, which is a great story in and of itself, because I think the difference between most of the old grads here, including myself, since 9/11, without exception, these youngsters have an idea of what they're getting into. They understand our nation's at war. They understand that we're in a persistent engagement right now. And although they have no idea whether they're going to stay in the Army for a career, they have made the decision they want to do something bigger than themselves. And that in itself causes them to do things that we may not have done as young cadets. And you see this retention rate continue. What's changed academically? 45 majors. That's not changing, by the way. Majors came into existence in the mid-'80s. We continue to do that. We're not going to increase that number. We try to evolve based on Army needs, if you will. We commission out of West Point 2 out of 3 of all of the Army's second lieutenants that have a math, engineering, science degree. That in itself tells you something. ROTC is unable to do that for reasons that you would understand if I got into that detail. I'll leave it to Dave Oley later to tell you after the dinner over a drink. But it takes about 5 years in ROTC, or most civilian colleges, to get that kind of degree. In our ROTC scholarships only offer 4 years. So they gravitate towards other kinds of things. So it's important that our graduates have the core courses here, and they all have these 30 core courses, but we have an official memorandum of agreement with the Secretary of the Army, our Executive Steering Committee, that 50% of our graduates will have a major in math, science, or engineering, and the other half in humanities. And so we'll continue to do that. This next slide shows one of the things that we probably haven't put a big enough spotlight on, in my view, and it's how wonderful the academic experience is at West Point. Underpinning all of this, though, of course, is the staff and faculty. Many of you in this room have served on that staff and faculty before. When you start comparing the numbers, and I did not have an appreciation until I came back in this job, it's absolutely astounding, the credentials that we have coming in there. 60% of the faculty are rotating faculty. They go to get a master's degree at top tier universities. 20% PhD civilians and 20% wearing the uniform that are permanent party that have PhDs. It's absolutely extraordinary, and again, that's the foundation for our success as an academic institution, and that's not about to change. How do we do with our cadets when it comes to this? This shows you how we've done this year. You can see these dozens, this dozen, if you will, of cadets, that how they've competed and how well they have done. Since 2000, we've had 18 Rhodes Scholars, 17 Truman Scholars, and 16 Marshall Scholars. I know there's several in this room here this evening. Let me tell you one thing just as a side note on this. It's changed since certainly I was a cadet, and those of you that preceded me. When I graduated, we graduated, 90% of your Order of Merit list, OML, was based on academics. And it made a lot of sense. But prior to me, I don't know if it was General Crispin or General Lennox, that mix changed. The focus was on, we're more than just academics. We expect this, by the way, to do well academically. But that Order of Merit list, 60% now academics, and 30% are on the military perspective, and 10% on physical. Because we're really viewing the holistic picture, if you will. The cadet coming out of there, we want to have Rhodes Scholars, and we'll continue to have them. But we're really looking towards young officers that have this breadth and depth experience and an intellectual and an academic and a physical and military experience to come into our Army and do great things for us. And so we have moved, if you will, that azimuth in a different direction. How we've done this academically. This next slide shows you what's changed really since 9/11, the semesters abroad, and you can see that right now. Judy and I just came back last Sunday from an overseas trip to China with 13 cadets who are over there on semester abroad. Last year we saw a bunch in both Spain and Morocco. 14 different countries this year. We put 150 cadets out there. Obviously they speak the language, but it's not necessarily their major that go out there. They've got to obviously have a couple of semesters under the belt, and they adapt very quickly, and it's very satisfying to see how quickly they mature and the life-altering experience they have.